you realized that your story was being written without you holding the pen in your hand. So how did it evolve to you saying, okay, I want to not only hold this pen and write my own story, but now I want to influence the masses? If you can talk a little bit about My Life, My Pen, and then of course, I know you have some pillars that support that whole model that you have.
Yeah, it's grown organically for me. I think like anything, whenever we get on an airplane and they go through their pre-flight safety check, they'll tell us and they'll get on, they'll do some announcements and they say, look, if we lose cabin pressure, these oxygen masks are going to fall. And if they do, we want you to put yours on first before you put it on anybody else. And so for me, I think you can't transmit something you haven't gotten. So for me, the work was to start with myself and really to rediscover myself because I had been so corrupted by both my success. I had this idea that because of this success I had had in business, that somehow the value of who I was had changed. And it really wasn't true because I had to look at how I had got there and what I had done on the way there. And so I started, I found recovery for my drug and alcohol problems. So step one was, how am I going to no longer engage in the disempowering behaviors that I was engaging in? So I found recovery for my drug and alcohol problems. So, I went to my first support group meeting and got around people with a common problem that had a common solution. And I raised my hand and I asked for help. And I think the one thing that I'll tell you about this journey for everybody is solution does not mean complete resolution of an issue. It means anything that I can do in the moment to improve my situation or make my situation better, right? So at the end of the day, what did I do on February 14th of 2008 is I did something different. Look, at the time, my family had left me. My business partner didn't trust me. My kids weren't talking to me. There were lots of problems in my life, but I did one thing to make that situation better. I didn't solve all those problems, but what I found is I needed to find a solution to this conditioning that my mind had gone through. We are really born champions and then unmade by negative influences. And so I had to go through this unmaking of how I became unmade and then put myself back together again. As a real estate developer, I like to say I was red tagged, which is when the government comes in and says this building's unsafe. I was red tagged. I was unsafe to enter. And so I had to go through a reconstruction project, right? I had to start from the bottom. They say we hit rock bottom. And so rock bottom is also a great place to build a foundation. And at the end of the day, if you go to New York City and you look at the skyline, all the taller buildings are built on the deepest bedrock because that's where you can really build a foundation. So I really started to tear into how I could reconstruct myself in the essence of that divine spark that was in me when I was born. And that was the first kind of chapter of that story. And then seeing how it had changed my life, I really decided I didn't go through all of this to develop another shopping center. And I want to develop people and I want to develop organizations and I want to develop teams. And what I'll tell you all is when you put yourself visually and mentally in that idea of what we can see, what we can visualize, what we can believe and take action on, we can create. And so all of a sudden, guys like George Mumford and Brian Kane and Sean Casey, these incredible mentors, Dr. Jason Selk in the mental performance world started to come into my life. I mean, George Mumford, who worked with the Lakers and the Bulls, a dear friend of mine, 2016, he's in my kitchen working with a guy who was staying with me. And so I got introduced to this idea that we could change the way we think, change the way we feel, change the way we behave, and change our lives in a direction that we want to. And that's where I learned, because your point is well taken. It's not just about owning the pen. How am I going to write with this thing now? What's the new story got to look like? And so you construct that with these 5 pillars that I created.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed that video, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. And while you're at it, please subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate it.